And we're live. This is Michael Finocchiaro of the AI Across the Product Lifecycle podcast. I'm joined by my friends Pradyut and Martin, who we've met actually in person a couple of times now over conferences over the past year, which is a lot of fun. So, Pradyut, why don't you introduce yourself and build a little bit?
Yeah. So my name's Pradyut. I'm one of the two co-founders of Bild. Bild is a CAD data management platform. We're essentially connecting all things engineering into manufacturing. Our focus is really around data management and automating the workflows built on top of that data set.
Awesome. And Martin Bielicki of Bench. Do you want to explain what Bench is doing?
Absolutely. Great to be here. My name is Martin. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at Bench. And at Bench, we're building an orchestration layer for engineering. So essentially, we're looking to apply AI to automating AI end-to-end workflows in engineering, so spanning CAD, simulations, PLM, and the like. And yeah, starting with CAD and simulations mainly.
Awesome. Um, So I usually like to open the podcast with a question, like looking back a little bit, like, the OpenAI moment that we all had in November 2022. And we were like, oh my God, AI can do that now. I've talked to, over 160 startups the last year and a half. Um, did you guys feel really bullish about AI at that moment when you first saw OpenAI and ChatGPT, or were you maybe you'd already worked on the earlier ones, ChatGPT 2? I mean, where did you guys say? Were you super bullish or were you a bit skeptical?
So for us, we basically started the company because of it. So we didn't
So
exist
bullish.
beforehand. So yeah, we didn't exist beforehand. So in our case, it was more so seeing what AI can do for initially like coding. It was very early results, but still, we could definitely see where it's going, and we knew that it will transform essentially any industry out there. Engineering is the one we obviously had expertise on, so we wanted to facilitate that change and wanted to bring that into reality.
Awesome.
Yeah,
How about you,
we're the
Pratik?
we're the opposite. So we started our company out in 2021, but like personally, I had an early access to Dolly. So this was even before ChatGPT.
Wow. Okay.
At Dolly, and you could like prompt it, and it would make these like images, and it was really cool. I mean, like I kind of knew like, wow, it was the first real time where you could prompt something and it would create, something brand new that was even before ChatGPT happened. It was not text based, very visual. So I kind of knew that it was, it would really kind of change the world. ChatGPT was the first application of it, obviously, and since then we've seen such an amazing proliferation of like AI and these different use cases. I mean, now it's everywhere, right? From like our own tech stack to some of the services and products that we're offering to our customers, and then even just like helping accelerate our go to market. So forget the engineering side, right? Like we're using it across the entire organization. And I think that any company that is not leveraging AI in these different facets is really just going to be like 10 times slower than you'll honestly not win.
Hmm. Um, So in terms of, I mean, we just talked on the origin of two companies that are roughly a year apart, but how has AI changed the way you guys code and the way you guys manage developers and manage the development process? I suppose it's a big difference, right? I mean, nobody's really sitting in front of an IDE actually writing lines of code anymore, which is a huge change from even as late as 2022, right?
Yeah. I mean, our hiring strategy has like really shifted. We actually find like kind of like testing and like QA and like validation to now be our bottleneck. So like we're hiring a lot of kind of people in the back end, right? So like have Claude Code or Cursor, right? Like write up all of these new features. It's to a point where we have Cursor hook up to Slack, and so when a customer reports a new feature, I can basically forward it to Cursor and say, "Ah, Cursor, go do this." It'll build it in the back end, and it's all interacting through Slack. And then we essentially have Graphite, which you guys probably know about, which will do some of the testing, and then we'll actually have human in the loop do the validation verification at the end, just making sure that it actually integrates properly to like through our workflows and in our application, and then we're able to push it out maybe even the same day, right? So we're able to go from concept to delivery in a day, which was obviously never possible before. I will say though, like our the accelerant or the catalyst of actually using AI in our engineering database probably happened sometime around like mid to end of last year. Like before that, right? Before like Opus 4.7 or that model kind of came out, it was cool and like you still had to do a lot of like checks, right? It was still like, oh, AI not I don't wanna say slop, but it was like instead of writing, 5 lines of code, it would write 200 lines of code or something like that. I think today it's an extremely efficient tool when it comes to coding, and we use it almost every day, if not multiple times a day.
Yeah, we probably
Same
had a
with
very
you
similar
over
experience. Yeah, probably very similar experience. So once again, we started the company basically after LLMs came into play. So we kind of always used them. But really the acceleration happened, I would say, the first kind of bit in like mid 2024, and then another kind of push, maybe probably a year later. And then recently was more so like this year and kind of late last year was more so like multi-agentic kind of systems where kind of our engineers would be kind of managing multiple agents in parallel, which also brings its challenges. Sometimes the limit becomes the human mind's capacity and kind of how many threads can you manage at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, on my side, the more commercial side, we also just use AI for all commercial stuff, kind of customizing decks, sales, and all the boring but important stuff that you have to do as well.
Yeah, actually, like to kind of Martin's point, I think like the commoditization of like what looks good. Like if your product doesn't look good today, right? Like it's just not an excuse. I think you really have to think through a lot. Maybe like product manager is the wrong phrase here, but like someone that's really thinking through the product and then let the engineering aspect of it be handed off to AI and these agents. I think that's really what's going to differentiate product to product, right? It's like the application and the workflow and how we think about like delivering value. That's going to be the differentiation, not the actual product. It's just the
Yeah,
vehicle of that value.
agreed. I think there's still space to be smart about how and what the workloads and what the broader UI is, not just the design. The design, yeah, it can be. But also, I think there's a difference between having good, okay design, which AI can do, and amazing design, which is
Yeah.
quite tough to get still.
Yeah. And I think like you look at we'll probably talk about this later, but you look at like the incumbent players, right? The question also is like, at what stack does AI help with coding, right? Like if you're on like a 1990s right software stack, as much as you try to feed it, you're gonna hit a ceiling pretty quickly,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're not on, I don't know what the latest like, software stack is today because I'm not an engineer, but like, I'm sure if you're not on anything post 2020, right? Like React and JS and all those kind of like scripts, like
Mm.
I don't think that you're gonna be able to succeed. And I look at some of these old architecture that I'm not gonna say their names, but all like the vendors are on, it's challenging, right? You can only innovate so much.
I've got a good question in here from on the chat from Morten Weiberg, who says, "To what degree are you depending on prompting skills as opposed to letting AI and fill in all the gaps? To reframe it slightly, how do you see the friction curve trending for AI in terms of autonomy? I use a lot of LLMs every day, and they all have reliability problems with the output quality."
In my work and like the more kind of commercial side, I think the prompt isn't as important. It's more so getting the right context in. So if we have the right, if AI has the right understanding of, for example, what customer I'm approaching, why, what's the use case, then I can kind of work out what I'm trying to do, or definitely kind of go in the right direction. The prompt itself, I haven't seen mattering that much.
Yeah, and I think like these foundational models have also gotten really good about like, hey, if I don't have enough like information from you in the prompt, I'm gonna follow up with questions, right? Like if you work in Cursor or Cloud Code, like it'll be like, oh, did you also want to look at this? And do you also want to consider XYZ? So like it's getting kind of better at asking you to be better at prompts as well, right? If it doesn't have all the information inside that prompt. I can't speak and now there's like more than just prompt. It's like a visual. You can send it a image and like a product screenshot and say, go do this. And it has all the context inside there. So I think we are getting to a point where it is multimodal. It doesn't just have to be a prompt. It could be so much more, as Martin said, right? Like context matters so much more than prompts these days.
Well, I was reading, it was some of these thousands of posts you get every day on LinkedIn about how they're going to you know, here's the 17,000 prompts of Claude to make you better at marketing, whatever. But someone was saying that we were moving from prompting to loops. So, which is, I think, what GSD was trying to solve before the guy walked off with all the money, you know. But I think that that's sort of the idea. You have, well, you basically build your skills on top of Git, and then you have your scaffolding so you can ask questions. It remembers. It can go look in Git to find out what it knew, 10 minutes ago, because of course it forgets instantly when it writes something. Um, yeah, I think that it's evolving a lot. Makes you wonder too, how do you, and I'm sorry, wasn't on the script, but it still interests me because you mentioned Frontier LLM. Well, Frontier LLM is not cheap, right? I mean, I don't know how much. I'm paying like way too much to Anthropic these days. How do you guys deal with that? Because as a founder before, you just had headcount, right? And then a couple SaaS licenses. Now you've got this variable cost of Anthropic or OpenAI or whatever. And I don't know about you guys, but like even Claude Max is gone within like the first 5 days of the month. I've already burned through the entire subscription. And then suddenly I'm on pay per use, and damn it, the bill is just so high. How do you guys deal with that? Because that's going to be an extra burn on your resources, right?
Yeah, but we've seen probably something similar, right, in the past of like with AWS as an example, right? People would
Well,
say,
S3 and things like that.
you had a server, right? And like you just paid it once and you just had to keep it in your closet and like you didn't have to think much about it. And now like you've got S3 buckets and EC2s, and EC2s aren't, cheap. So it's like how do you think about that as you scale your business and cloud computing? And so I think we're going through that same like mental shift when it comes to cost, right? You're going from headcount costs to maybe tokens, right? When we did AWS, you're going from physical real estate costs and hardware costs to cloud computing, and that you could also say is kind of like a token, right? Where an EC2, you're really getting charged an EC2 per minute or per hour, whatever, like denomination they use, but kind of the same thing at the end of the day.
Okay.
I'm curious how it's going to play out because we were seeing like companies like Uber, for example, capping, I think AI spending like $1,500 per month for their coders. I do want how it's going to play out in the long term. And now like, the cost conversation now is coming in like, back into the scene where it wasn't a conversation like a year ago. And also, by extension, I'm curious how it's going to work in our accounts and like engineering companies. I
Yeah, of
think
course.
many of them are still not using Gen AI for like their development. Most of them, in my eyes, are using kind of like AI accelerated simulations or the co-pilots. I don't think for many of them it's a topic yet, but I think it will be one in like a year or two. In my eyes, our industry is like a year or two behind coding.
Yeah, but cost is also just like one like dimension that we look at. It's like time, right? Like even if the number of tokens or the cost of tokens we end up spending in a year is like 100, $200,000, right? Like that is a replacement of sure like one engineer, but the amount of like throughput that we would have had in those $200,000 of tokens would be much higher than headcount and engineering, and it would be done way faster, right? So now you're able to it's not just cost,
Yeah,
ship products faster. Maybe you have to do a little bit more validation there, but like there is a give and trade, even if costs creep up to the cost of like human labor.
agreed. But I think it's going to be hard for companies to measure that output at times, and that's also why Uber's capping theirs probably. Yeah, it's a tough one.
What about, I mean, in terms of frontier LLMs, what about homegrown ones? Are you guys looking at training your own models or internally using LM Studio or Olama or whatever so that you avoid, going every single time out to Sonnet or Fable whenever the U.S. government allows us to use it, right?
Yeah, it's back as of
It
yesterday.
is, and I used it. I used it this afternoon. Very
For
briefly because
us,
it's so expensive.
for us, we're not training our models yet. It's on the kind of longer term roadmap. But what we are doing is kind of essentially ensuring that we can use the cheaper models as often as possible. So essentially building tooling around the models and our kind of what we have built internally, deterministic tooling that essentially allows us to use lower intelligence models, and that's how we manage it.
Yeah, we look at it a little bit different way. It's kind of like a stitch between what you said, Michael, on like the loops and what you said on like context. Yeah, nowadays people are calling it like orchestration layer, right? Like if you can create a well kind of like orchestrated understanding of when do we have to use, right, like Fable 5 versus when can we use like a really cheap model. And are we going to use a VLM? Are we going to use text? Are we going to put in a raw step? That's also really important. So that orchestration layer, I think, has really been our focus. And behind the scenes, there could be a variety of different models, right? To your point, Martin, we have to make the smart decisions on knowing not to give the PhD, right, basic arithmetics. Understand kind of like what level of model do we need to use for complex tasks, and then like what are the simple tasks that much cheaper models are going to be great at, and they're going to be faster at it too, as well.
Um, and has last question, and we'll move on to more AI inside your stack. But how has AI changed the way you organize your programmers in the organization? In other words, has it changed Agile and waterfall? I mean, everybody was already on Agile, but I thought the waterfall was sort of making a little bit of a comeback, and now I wonder how agents have changed all that. I mean, it seems like soon you'll be inviting agents to your Scrum meetings rather than humans, right? Because they're the ones doing all the heavy lifting. How is that changing the way you guys? Because you guys both managing these enterprises with lots of developers. How has that changed the way you manage developers, basically?
I mean, we're a startup. I don't think we have Scrum meetings. Like, yeah, right? Like we have to be a lot faster than that. I think I talked about this, right? Like our focus is really on like the bottleneck is just now more on like QA validation, human in the loop before we get
Right.
in like market. Like what questions like what is an engineer? Like I am now just forwarding a customer ticket on a Slack channel to another Slack channel and saying add cursor, do this, and it's just getting done in the background, right? So like a lot of people in our organization that didn't have the ability to make changes to with limits, right, and with constraints, that didn't have the ability to make changes to our product. Something as simple as, hey, we just want, there's a drop down list and there's 300 items in that list, and instead of just sorting it alphabetically, the customer wants to have a search bar at the top of that list. Can we just add that? Right. That is quality of life. Like Cursor is great at that, right? That is where we are finding the best use of AI right now inside of the non-engineering team, right? Obviously, the engineering team is using AI in much, much different ways than non-engineers are. So I think like the scope of what is an engineer and who can actually impact a product has gotten a lot wider in our organization. Excuse me. But the other part of it is on the engineering side, what is the focus? And the focus right now is how do we enable those updates to actually enter production? And that just means testing, validation, human in the loop.
So yeah, for us, we're a team of five, so also we probably haven't changed our ways very much after AI. A bit too early for that. But what I have been thinking a lot about is how AI will change how engineering companies organize themselves. And I think that has to come sooner or later, just how enterprise and software have changed how they organize their teams. This has to come in engineering to actually harness the full value. And I think this will not come until this will be induced by like a software player coming in that kind of enables that cloud code for hardware kind of curse for a hardware proposition that hasn't happened yet, and that'll still take time, and it's going to be a huge implementation experience probably for the consulting companies or whoever else does it. But yeah, but I'm curious about that, and I've been thinking about that quite a lot.
I guess maybe I should qualify the question. I guess what I was thinking is if you have multiple agents all hitting your code base at the same time, they could be overriding each other. And Agile was supposed to help us not be destroying somebody else's code. So how do you manage that? If you're using multiple agents that are all hitting the same code base, how do you make sure that agent number one didn't just overwrite the code that agent number two did because they're actually not even talking to each other because they're all in their own little context universe that are not talking to each other, right? I mean, that's why we used Agile, so you could coordinate multiple people writing the same code with agents that are not really, or are you think is there an orchestration layer on top already? Because I don't on Cloud Code. I mean, I have 7 windows open inside of Warp, and they don't know what the hell the other guy's doing. That's for sure. They don't know. I don't know. Maybe
That's
it's
a
just a
great
question.
question. That's a great question for our CTO. I have no
You're
idea.
muted.
And
I think Pradyut. I can't hear you.
No, I got him.
I was gonna say, great question for our CTO. I have no, I have no idea. Right? I couldn't tell you, too in detail, kind of like the engineering organization and like exactly how they're dealing with these merge conflicts or whatever they're going to be. But what I will say is like it from like just not being a software engineer by background, like the capabilities and like the things that we interview for today, right? On a software engineering basis, it's more on architecture. It's more about how do you think about like the how do you think about the product? Maybe again, going back to it, product management's maybe not the right, you know, role or the phrase here, but it's something really around like, okay, this thing has been built because again, if you imagine it, it can be built today. It's really about how do we integrate it in a frictionless way to the product and to the workflow so that the end user can extract the most value from the thing that we just built, right? It's not just modules on top of each other where you have to kind of context switch and go to a different app or go to a different window. It all needs to be really seamless, and the experience more than ever, right, matters today.
Yeah, probably same answer from my side. Yeah, bit of a more question to my CTO. Haven't heard that being a huge issue though. So being managed somehow.
So in terms of your stacks, like where is AI already influencing the user experience? Is it what's managing the underpinning, the kind of the yeah the plumbing, or is AI and the entire from top to bottom? It's already all of stack or all of build and all of bench are already leveraging AI just about everywhere. How have you guys integrated into your stack?
Yeah, so AI is pretty central to our product. We have built with AI in mind from day one. With that, it by design, AI is not central to every part of the product. As I mentioned before, some of the parts of the product are more deterministic, and we kind of lean on those more deterministic methods, like CAD kernels or kind of different tooling, to essentially ease the load on the AI, ease the dependence on AI, and also just to get determinism, because also AI is not made for determinism specifically. It's kind of how you marry that intelligence with determinism. So currently, we use AI to collect context, to plan tasks, to kind of to make judgments on kind of some decisions. But we generally try to keep the execution and the actual completion of task deterministic, and that's kind of how we get really how we build trust with customers.
Yeah, I mean, as we kind of started out this conversation saying like we started pre-AI, and like just the nature of our business is we are storing all of our customers' CAD data, right? Millions, tens, now probably like hundreds of millions of assets. And so we have to be really careful in terms of like how we implement AI into our product and making sure that like the customer's very well aware that like their product data would touch AI if they choose to do it, right? It has to be an opt-in for our customers, just kind of given the nature of how we implement build inside organizations. Now, over time, I think like the customer's mindset will shift and it'll be kind of like, oh yeah, like, why wouldn't I do it? And you can kind of just throw it in your terms of conditions and that will be a general industry shift. But for right now, it is very much an opt-in, like in your face. You understand that your CAD data is touching AI. But also like we're not training any models on our customer data, right? And we're very, very clear on that. So I think trust is a big part of it, especially in this industry. And I think that again, just given the nature of build and our product, just because we're hosting IP, it is really, really important for us to make sure that our customers know if and when AI is touching their CAD, and it has to be an opt-in situation.
Awesome. Um, so now we've been like 4 years into this whole AI thing, and we've seen already the amount of change has just been mind-boggling, right? Um, I want to just ask, like, in the last section of this part of just how do you see things moving forward? Do you think that we're going to hit a sort of open AI moment where, there was before AI and then now there's the after AI thing? Is there going to be something where engineering just suddenly overnight just becomes a different thing? Has it already happened and we missed it? Is it 10 years from now? Is it 6 months from now? What's your prediction on where AI is going to take us and when it's actually going to have immediate day-to-day irrevocable impact on how engineers build stuff?
Yeah, so we're definitely building towards that moment. That's the thesis of our company, really. So the difficulty is kind of in engineering, it's a bit harder to scale AI across every single use case. So in code, of course, text is more native to kind of how we code. So essentially, AI kind of impacted all of coding at the same time and got better at all the use cases at the same time. Whereas in engineering, it seems to be going more of use case by use case, or kind of software stack by software stack, maybe CAD first, then simulations, and then PLM. So kind of the generalization is a bit tougher in engineering, but we definitely do see that coming. Uh, we do already see an irrevocable impact of Bench today. The question, kind of, so AI is impacting our customers' workflows. Uh, it is just kind of the initial kind of workflows we work with, not everything at the same time yet. So yeah, we are definitely pushing towards that. We believe that in sometime in the next 12 to 24 months, we will have that OpenAI moment, that OpenAI AI moment where the the day-to-day of engineering changes. But out of to my previous point, even if the tech is here in 12 to 24 months, the implementation and the change management is going to be a tough one, especially in these companies that are by nature quite much slower than a Meta or an Amazon and their kind of development cultures. So I think both hurdles are going to be quite significant, and both have to be taken into account.
Yeah, and I like, just on your last point, Martin, I think there'll be, some industries that'll be faster to adopt, AI in their tooling. Consumer is probably gonna, in my opinion, take kind of the lead there just because of lack of regulation and, like, they're just trying to get products to market faster.
Is it
Um,
consulting? So you broke up for a second.
consumer,
Consumer, okay.
yeah,
Mhm.
not consulting. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know but, like, the if is not really a question, right? Like, I think it will happen. I just don't know the when, but I do agree with Martin that, like, there is, like, different aspects that people are focusing on, like, the application. Today, like, I probably see 5 videos a day on, like, oh, text-to-CAD, right? And then it's like, oh, just because you can design it doesn't mean you can manufacture it, right? And then, like, there's another, like, AI thing around, oh, DFM, and so there's so much to it. And it's not as simple, right, as code. Not saying that code is simple, but, like, to Martin's point, like, no one thought about back-end AI engineering and front-end AI engineering and software, right? But, like, in hardware, you have to think about engineering, you have to think about manufacturing, you have to think about supply chain. There's a lot more facets to it. Um, and so, like, for us, I think that moment really looks like the democratization of information and kind of like how we're feeling about that today. Like, you don't need to be a backend expert to now manage a database and to have compute in the backend and to be able to code, and have an app live. You could do all of that even if you didn't know anything about software engineering yesterday. You could do that today. And I think that is kind of like the moment that I'm really looking forward to in hardware, where it's like I don't really need to know all of the thousand rules of like GD&T, and I don't really need to know how to use SolidWorks or NX or whatever that the tool is. I just need to know this is kind of like what I want it to look like. These are the components I want to be part of it, and I need AI to rapidly create this product, and then we'll start thinking about the downstream implications of sourcing and actual DFM. But like the actual LLM or the AI tool will already start thinking about that, right? So it's kind of really like how do we enable more people to build things without having to carry all of this knowledge base with us.
Interesting. Um, did you guys see that there's gonna be that, demo of 5 or 6 startups in DC at the CD Fam, and that's gonna be kinda crazy, right?
Yeah, in a
'Cause,
couple
this
weeks,
whole
right?
workflow, Ntop, Istari Digital, Siskit, all these guys I've interviewed and been really blown away by. Wish I could go. I hope you guys have a good time out there, Dwan and company. But I think there'll be some there I'm I'm sort of expecting that to be almost an OpenAI moment there. I think there might be some amazing stuff happening. So I hope that somebody records it and shares that particular presentation with everybody. So I guess you guys are both as bullish or more bullish than you were back in 2022. Then it sounds it from it to me. You guys are both
Yeah,
more bullish than
definitely.
before. Um, Well, before I move on to the last subject, for the and the demographics that people watch this podcast, there's actually quite a lot of like entry level or very early engineers, some university kids, because I write a lot of educational stuff. Um, what advice can you give its founders and of awesome software companies to these younger graduates that are maybe worried about being AI'd out of a job? That's sort of a big topic right now. So, what kinds of skills, what kind of things well, I mean, Prada, you pointed to human testing and understanding how things work and intuition, but what are kinds of things can people do to prove that, "Hey, I'm actually better than an agent, and so you should hire me?"
I think it's, like, different than being better than an agent. I think it's just being different than an agent, right? Like, don't have commoditized skills, right? I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, coding's dead," because entry-level coding jobs are kind of like now it's just a commodity, right? Like, data entry is a commodity. And I think, like, over time, there will be things that are commodities, and there will be, like, high value work that will be needed. And we see that shift across all sorts of industries, right? Like we work with customers that are in the autonomous agricultural space, right? And there's this whole uproar of like, hey, like, are farmers going to be out of jobs if they're not? And, are we going to have low skilled labor kind of be cut in half because these tractors can kind of go and pick and kill weeds and all this sort of stuff, right? So the question is not about like um, will AI, do my job? It's like, is your job something that's differentiated? And I think just like having a unique take, and we talked about this earlier, which is like our focus has really been on the front end, right? Like, what is the actual product that we want to build, and how do we really think about integrating it into like a very delightful experience for our customers? And then it's on the back end, which is like, can we validate that and make sure that our like thesis is true, right? Like, does it actually hold ground when we have, we just coded this like feature, but like, how does it actually look in the hands of our customers? Um, Everything in the middle is now just like AI, right? And I think that could be true for hardware engineering, right? It's like the world could be your imagination. Like it's like anything, anything that you want to think about could happen, right? And you could build it, and you could go to a manufacturing shop, and you could go and get it, and built and assembled and sourced. All that could be true. Then the question is like, what can AI not do? And it's really about like thinking, right? It's like it's creativity, it's being imaginative. And I'm seeing a lot of really cool, jobs open up in these larger organizations, especially in Silicon Valley around like creativity in engineering and less around like the actual like doing of the engineering.
Awesome.
What's an example of that creativity role? Do you have any tangible examples? Like kind of what the actual job spec
Yeah,
is there?
there's like so if you look at like OpenAI and like Anthropic jobs today, it's kind of like no one, and they even like say it's right. Like this job may not exist in 12 months. It's kind of funny because they know like
Mm.
over time AI is gonna to go. But there was one that was about AI in physical sciences, and it's like, oh, like what are different ways AI could right touch physical sciences? And all they're really trying to do is like, oh, we've been focusing purely on code, right? And like, there's this big market for code, but like what else could happen, right? And like, what are the opportunities AI being embedded in there? And really, what they're just thinking about is like people that are creative, understand a domain, and that can think about how can AI create a better experience in that domain, right? And that doesn't require knowledge of like core AI LLM infrastructure. That doesn't require knowledge on being a PhD in material sciences or whatever. But it's just like the applications, right? And that's the creativeness. And that's why I keep going back to like it's not a product manager because like the product manager role like that was there 5-10 years ago is so different than kind of what you're looking at right now. And again, like once you understand and can define that embedded application of AI in these more nuanced and niche verticals, I think it opens up this whole new like industry, right? That like AI can go and disrupt. And I think like us as startups, we're trying to take some uh, forward paths towards embedding AI into hardware engineering, right? Whether it's on the simulation side, whether it's on the design side, manufacturing, whatever it might be. But like it's happening also at these big companies. And that's again the big differentiator. It's how are you actually introducing these experiences to your end customer, because everything else will, product can get commoditized very quickly.
Yeah. To answer the question briefly about kind of what junior engineers should do, I think first of all, engineers are here to stay for a long time, and for a long time, engineers are going to be in the loop, and that's kind of a big feature kind of many of our customers really want. But also kind of looking to what happened in software, I think there's a big rift in the software engineering market in the sense that the best are getting paid more than ever, and the lower half are just kind of struggling to find jobs. And in the end, that's probably what's going to happen in engineering as well. I think that we're a long way off of engineers not being needed or not being valued, but it's even more important to be in that top half or the top quarter even. So yeah, the advice would be just be the best you can.
Ouch. There's only so many places for this.
Yeah.
Um, so I like to switch gears and think about digital transformation. When I think about companies being digital mature, you were I think it was proud of you alluded to how companies are evolving and stuff like that. I think of digital transformation on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is sort of companies still on Excel and email, which is unfortunately the case everywhere. And then like a 5 would be, oh, they've already got autonomous, agentic, adaptive digital twins, right? Which is basically nobody. Um, when you guys go and talk to customers, do you find that they're closer to 1, closer to 5, closer to 3? I mean, what's your feeling? Because no customer is going to come on to my podcast and say, yeah, I really suck at digital transformation, right? But you guys, you don't have to name them obviously, but you guys are in touch with these people. What's your feel? Are companies starting to transform, or are they still a bit reluctant?
I think
I'd
everyone
guess around
I think
go.
everyone wants to be like a 4 or 5, right? But like where are they today? Realistically, they're like a 2, right? I don't think they're like a 1, right?
Too
Maybe
being yeah, too
maybe
being
some.
generous sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Hey, we work with some like fabricators that are still doing prints, like physical prints, and they're still doing like, the physical classic sign-offs on changes and red lines, and that's okay, right? Like it's not bad. It's work for them, right? And for them, like what is 5? Like 5 could just be like, oh, I have an iPad in front of me and like now I can redline on an iPad instead of like this physical print. And so like I think like everyone wants to be more innovative, but I think everyone also is like grounded in truth that like this is not going to happen overnight, right? There is change management involved. There are processes. There are other business applications. There's compliance factors. So really for us, we see a lot of I and I think most people also on the other end, I don't know if they want to be a 5. I think they want to be like a 4, right? And I don't think they're looking and saying, I'm going to replace my entire finance or engineering team with AI. And like, that's how we're going to run the business. I think they're going to be like, we're going to be a 10 times more productive business with the same headcount and with the same resources. And we're just going to grow market share. So what we're seeing is like people that want to be 4s that are probably like 1.5 2s.
What about you, Martin?
Yeah. Yeah, that probably tracks. I don't have much to add here. It's mostly I would say, especially on the AI transformation scale, it's like 1 or 2. Um, Digital probably a bit better. If you look at those kind of larger enterprise like automotive aerospace, yeah, digital more so. AI not there yet, and kind of everybody uses AI, but more so in the ML sense than Gen AI, but more so.
I also think like it's important to flavor in like what department you're talking to and who at that department you're talking to, right? If you're talking to the CIO, you're going to get a very different answer than if you're going to talk to like the VP of engineering or and mechanical engineer. So, and it's also that answer might be completely different from engineering to manufacturing as well.
Absolutely. So my theory is that if you're going to wait for the big 3 to do that transformation, it's going to be a while. Whereas if you go to Build or Bench, you're going to get the AI without having to wait. And I'm wondering if when you've done that, when the customer's seen what you can do, Has there been an aha moment where like, oh man, if I, broke down the data silos and I had good data governance and I had more data to feed to these AI powered tools, holy crap, I would get so much more out of this. And I don't need to wait for, 2 or 3 years for the roadmap to mature at these big vendors. Have you ever seen that actually happen or?
I was actually surprised a couple times by kind of big OEMs approaching us with actually asking for quite big visions immediately. So they are thinking about how do we transform our whole company and our whole development process with AI. And I've been surprised. I didn't think this would happen, would come from them that quickly. So yeah, so they actually know where they want to go. It's more that nobody can really deliver that whole proposition yet. So I think that they will be probably picking different players for different initial parts of that workflow, and then looking to who can then do the whole thing maybe, or who can kind of what's the combination to achieve the whole vision. How quickly can we get there? But yes, I was surprised a couple times. But then some other customers, yeah, you come in with one use case, and then they start thinking, okay, maybe we could apply this here and there. Maybe this department also could need this. But generally, we tend to start from the most obvious, painful one, and then continue the conversation.
Yeah, we take a slightly different approach. You get kind of two buyers. You get like the buyer that's buying AI, and you get the buyer that's buying value, right? And if AI happens to be part of that value, then great. Um, and and we like the latter kind of buyer, right? Which is, hey, I have a problem and I'm looking to solve for it. If AI is part of that solution, amazing, right? But like if AI is not part of it, that's still okay. And I think that's like really important to our philosophy. It's like we're not just we don't go to companies and companies will come to us and say, hey, I want to use AI. How can I use AI? Right? It's that's go to Accenture for that. You're coming to us because you're saying, hey, I have a very specific problem. I'm looking to solve for it, and your solution, claims to automate engineering documentation, right? Now, part of that could be deterministic, part of that could be through inferencing and AI. And every vendor will have their own approach in terms of how they claim to automate engineering documentation. And it's like who is delivering the best value or the most amount of value, right? In terms of solving for that problem. I think when you look at the legacy players, they have these big claims, but they fall short, right? They're maybe delivering 10 to 20% of the proposed value. Whereas we're able to, sure, leverage AI in many cases, but at the end of the day, actually deliver on the value that we're telling people, right? And so I think that it's differentiating between the smart buyer and the buyer that's buying AI to buy AI.
But there was, let's say, an issue in your response though, because if the customer goes back to Accenture and CAP, they're all going to propose another module of Windchill or 3D Experience or Team Center or SAP. They're not going to. They don't know who Bench is. They don't necessarily know who Build is.
Yeah, but
So
like
you don't want that to be the gut response because it'll never get back to you again.
I don't think our win to a organization is, hey, we have AI and Windchill doesn't have AI, right? Or I mean, Windchill has AI, right? It really is kind of saying, here's exactly what you can do in Windchill and the value that it has, and there's value there, and then here's the value and the philosophy that
A
Build
Build,
has, and it's like it's really just like philosophical differences at the end of the
of
day,
course.
right? Are you an organization that is going to spend $3 million on Windchill and use it as a vault, right? And there's a lot of other value inside of it, but maybe your organization is not ready to adapt that value. So even though that there's things there, you just can't do anything. Or are you looking at or are you looking at a tool like Build, where your organization can adapt it in days or weeks or months, right? But you can go deep into like the engineering value that you can drive. You don't have to go into supply chain and operations and manufacturing. Just drive a lot more value vertically into the engineering organization. So I think it's just like a philosophical buy, and it's like really it comes down to value. If somebody's looking to solve for problems, we're here to help solve for those problems, and we'll give them our roadmap, right? To Martin's point, they do kind of lead with this. What is the 5-year plan? But let's back into making sure we're solving for the 1-year plan for sure, right? But they do want to know that you're going to grow with them because their business is going to grow and your system needs to grow with their evolving needs. And there's different ways to solve for it. But and I think that to just kind of end on this one note, the thing that where we really win is like this kind of say, hey, this was X tool and this was it in 2020, and this is X tool and this is it in 2026. I can name you on one finger or on one hand, the number of changes that have really been happening, right, in 6 years. And now look at Build or look at Bench or look at any of these newer players, and you could probably, get all of those updates done in a week or in 2 months, right? So the pace of innovation that we're able to deliver is far outpaces any of the incumbent tools, and that's like true for most industries anyway.
Did you want to jump in, Martin?
I think that covers everything.
Okay. Because I was just hoping that the thesis is more if you use, well, just I guess the question is more about how do you guys get more visibility to the startups when all the public space is taken by the bigger vendors? How do we make more space for your solutions to be more visible? And I guess that's why I created Threadmill and I do these podcasts to give you guys sort of a platform.
I think there's a couple different approaches. I think first it just comes down to your product, and I think a lot of the big players are maybe not as focused as we are, and they just kind of deliver the same value in the verticals, the applications that we choose that we can. So I think the core is just what can your product do versus what can theirs do. And I think for a long time they cannot match what we do broadly as a startups because of their speed and just historically they just not known for being the fastest or the quickest to innovate. So I'm not worried about that part that much. Um, Otherwise, it's about building trust with these big companies. So right now, I guess trust is built mainly through like pilots and through kind of proving that it actually works. I think trying to increase I guess, the position that startups hold in our clients' minds would be interesting. And with that, some programs like those programs like Plug and Play or different kind of accelerators or whatever they are, of those innovation platforms, they can help, and there's, I guess, different results that come from them. Some of them really elevate your profile and they give you a great introduction, and then the framing of the sales completely different. Some of them don't, frankly, or they're just not that valuable. So in the end, I think the core, in my opinion, is just the product, and I think being able to showcase the trust in some way with the client, usually a pilot, kind of with your approach to kind of how you built the product, um, is what you need. I think the question will become, what happens when I don't know, the salt systems releases something that's 10 times worse, but kind of does the same thing. And of course, our thesis is that, but we still win. And I think that the product speaks for itself. But I think that's going to be the testing moment.
Yeah. Anything to add,
Yeah.
Pradyut?
Well, I was just say like, capability is kind of like a checkbox, right? But like the experience is what really matters at the end of the day, right? So like, yeah, they could click a checkbox, we can do this, right? As Martin said, but if it's not a binary, can we do this, can we not do this? It really is about, well, how well can we do this, right? And how well have we integrated into the core experience so that you can actually gain value from this thing that we've built. And I think startups, more than incumbent vendors, are very customer obsessed, and we really care about like
Yeah.
how are you feeling, and we take the time to actually have those conversations with customers. Whereas I think legacy, vendors get caught into this kind of like innovator's dilemma situation where it's like, I'm going to be focusing on my top, 50 customers, and I'm going to index on problems that they have. And that might cause a negative impact to the rest 2,000 customers that I have, right? Because from a balance sheet perspective and from a P&L, those 10, 100 customers, whatever they are 80% of my revenue, and I need to keep them happy and I need to grow them. And that's just a different philosophy I think startups have.
Um, Actually, I had some good questions in the chat that just came in like a minute ago, and I know we're almost done, but I'll pose the first one to Martin and the second one to Pradu. How about we do that? So the first one is from Susan Coons, my friend over at Siemens, and she wants to hear about how AI agents are beginning to automate CAD and CA workflows end to end.
Great question, and I think the end-to-end point is a very interesting one, because a lot of the customers we speak to want end-to-end workflows and kind of end-to-end orchestration. But kind of to our previous point, I don't think that they are ready necessarily organization wise to do end-to-end workflows via agents. And I think that there's going to need to be kind of evolution in how they structure their teams internally for that to be able to do end-to-end workflows. Currently, where we are seeing the biggest adoption, kind of the most pull, is kind of end-to-end workflows, but kind of contained within one department or one team. So, for example, an end-to-end workflow for the CAD department, but not CAD simulations and systems. They want that for sure. That's where we're going, and that's what our product will will enable. But I do think there's going to have to be some reshuffling internally on who manages that. Because if we have an optimization problem going from CAD through sim, through requirements, and then back, who manages that? Who's the overarching team? Is it CAD now managing the whole process? Usually, we see then the CAE team not being very willing to give up their ownership.
Of course not.
So that's kind of what we're seeing now, and I think the tech will come sooner than the organization readiness.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much. That reminds me too, like we were having, I've had 2 podcasts so far on just EBOM and MBOM. And to me, it's the same problem, because at the end of the day, you could do it in ERP, you could do it in PLM, but whose budget is that? The engineers on the PLM and the manufacturer's ERP, so everybody's going to say, okay. So the question to Pradyut, this is from Brian Stack, the founder and CEO at Digital Twin. .co.uk, so a UK startup doing digital twin. He says, as someone awakening in this space, and just having validated our digital twin for machinery in our R&D facility, I'd like to know your take on the future of engineering. We also run humanoid robots here. An engineer can look at a machine and go and create a fix and repair a part. The AI, how do you see the, wait a second, I got lost in the reading that. We also run humanoid robotics here. An engineer can look at a machine and go and creatively fix or repair a part, whereas the AI will try to replace it. So how do we get around those kind of things? And then he said, because he said the executive teams are trying to decide how they can hire less skilled staff because the AI tools are going to do everything.
Okay. I think the question got lost in.
Yeah, kind of. I think he's asking just about the future of engineering. How, at what point can, are we going to be able to trust AI to do more of these engineering tasks? And how do we keep skilled humans in the loop as opposed to just unskilled people that are just hands to do stuff that the robot can't do? I think that's sort of what he's trying to get to.
Yeah, I think it's like a crawl, walk, run approach, and it's like trust but verify is like our thesis, right? Especially at Build, right? Like it's like, okay, we think that the AI could do a lot of this, right? Especially on like the software side. But as I mentioned, we always have human in the loop on the verification, the QA side of things, right? So it is always trust but verify. And I think like that'll hold true for like hardware engineering as well, right? It's like, yeah, let the, AI go from Text-to-CAD or whatever you want to do. But then like, the first step is always going to be have a drafter, or have a mechanical engineer look at drawings, make sure everything's annotated well, make sure like it's up to like DFM standards. So I think it's like you can achieve 90% of the work in a relatively short time using AI, but it's leveraging humans still to verify that the data is accurate and like it's accurately represented the output that you were hoping to achieve. I think over time that it'll obviously grow into AI owning that verification layer, and then it's like AI verifying AI verifying AI, as we're seeing today in the software world. But I think it is that crawl, walk, run approach paired with trust but verify.
But just to close out, thank you very much. I was just wondering where can where can folks meet you between now and the end of the year? What trade shows you're going to be at where they can come and get a live demo, bench, and build and meet you guys?
Yeah, so we actually were in Startup Autobahn in Stuttgart today, as we're just
Nice.
wrapping out now. So yeah, my CTO is there, and my co-founder as well. And then we are also visiting Detroit for the American Automotive Summit in September.
Nice. What
While
about
you're
you,
there in
Pradyut?
September, you should swing down to IMTS in
Yeah, I
Chicago,
was about to say IMTS is
dude.
about that time, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
could do.
we'll be there at IMTS. We'll be in DC in a couple of weeks at CDFAN.
Oh, you're going to be there? Awesome,
Yeah,
man. Are you
we'll
demoing?
be.
Are you on the stage?
No, I'm gonna be just attending there for a day.
I'd love to hear
Um,
your feedback afterwards.
yeah, yeah. I'll share any like notes that I have with you.
Thanks.
Um, we've got a few. Like we've got like partners. conferences. They're like we're part of like the NetSuite SDN program, and NetSuite's like our biggest ERP integrator. So we'll be at Suite World later this year in October, I think. And then obviously IMTF.
And if there's another threaded event, I can count on you guys, right? I'm hoping to do one in Munich in October. I'm still trying to figure that one out. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope that people I saw, thank you for the questions from the audience. And next week I'll do another one of these. I'm trying to remember who that is. Who am I with next week? Well, anyway, it'll be fun. It's been great. Thank you, guys. We'll see you guys next week on the AI Across the Product Lifecycle podcast. And take care. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Michael.
Bye bye.